Was it possible to dread a single piece of paper this much? The invitation lay on my chipped kitchen counter, its creamy cardstock and embossed gold lettering mocking the peeling linoleum beneath it. Jason Carter and Sarah Miller request the pleasure of your company. My name, Michael Carter, was scrawled in elegant calligraphy, but it felt like a summons to a trial I'd already lost. At 32, I was the family disappointment, the older brother who'd walked away from medical school, leaving behind my parents' dreams and their carefully crafted narrative of success. My younger brother Jason was the golden boy, his engagement dinner, a coronation I was expected to attend, to sit quietly and play the part of the lesser son. The air in my cramped apartment carried the faint, bitter scent of instant coffee, a reminder of late nights spent building something my family couldn't or wouldn't see. My chest tightened, an old barbed wire knot twisting as I pictured the evening ahead. My father's subtle digs, my mother's theatrical sighs, Jason's smug superiority. Yet beneath the dread, a flicker of defiance stirred. I glanced at my phone, the screen glowing with Access Path's latest stats: 80,000 users, real people whose lives were easier because of me. Would they ever understand? The question hung heavy, unanswered, as I folded the invitation and tucked it away, already bracing for the gilded cage of their expectations. The weight of that invitation followed me through the day, a persistent shadow I couldn't shake. It wasn't just a dinner, it was a stage where my role was pre-written, rehearsed over years of family gatherings. I could still hear my father Richard in his mahogany-paneled study, his silence louder than any lecture when I told him I couldn't do medicine anymore. The room had smelled of old leather books and polished success, but it felt like a courtroom my sentence delivered in his cold granite stare. My mother Susan had been worse. Her tears and whispered phone calls to her sisters, lamenting my lost future, carried through the thin walls of our house. "Oh, Michael, we just worry so much," she'd say, her hand fluttering to her chest as if my choices were a personal betrayal. They never asked what I wanted. Instead, they mourned the life they'd designed for me, a blueprint I'd crumpled and tossed away. Jason, meanwhile, soared, business degree, finance job, a condo with a view that screamed achievement. Family dinners became his victory lap, each one a reminder of my supposed failure. I remembered one Christmas, the scent of pine and turkey suffocating as Dad clapped Jason's shoulder, boasting about his new watch, his voice booming. "That's my boy, setting the world on fire." My attempt to share a community tech project idea earned a dismissive nod. "A keep yourself busy, son," that stung like a slap. That project, though, became my lifeline. Access Path wasn't born in a flash of genius, but in the quiet frustration of volunteering at a disability resource center, watching people fight bureaucratic mazes for basic healthcare. I'd taught myself to code, building a database to connect them to accessible providers. The work consumed me, fueled by black coffee and late-night determination in my tiny apartment, the hum of my old desktop a steady companion. The first email from a user, "Your program helped me find a doctor who understands," lit a spark in my chest, a warmth I hadn't felt in years. It was purpose, raw and real, eclipsing the family's disapproval. But the invitation on my counter threatened to drag me back into their narrative. I stood in my apartment, the fading daylight casting long shadows across the worn floor, and felt the familiar ache of being unseen. Tonight I'd face them again, their judgments as sharp as ever. But something in me stirred, a resolve, small but stubborn, to hold on to the truth of what I'd built, even if they refused to see it. The memory of that day in my father's study clung to me like damp fog, heavy and inescapable. I'd stood there, 22 years old, the words "I can't do this anymore" burning like ash in my mouth as I told him I was leaving medical school. The sharp tang of formaldehyde from the anatomy lab still lingered in my memory, a scent that once promised intellectual pursuit but had become the odor of my suffocation. His silence was worse than any outburst, a cold granite weight that stretched into weeks, broken only by his grave pronouncement that I'd thrown away a golden opportunity, spat on their sacrifices. The room, with its leather-bound books and faint metallic sheen of success, felt like a tomb sealing my failure. My mother's reaction was a flood of tears, her voice a stage whisper on phone calls to her sisters, drifting through our house's thin walls. Michael's lost, just drifting. Her signature phrase, "Oh, Michael, we just worry so much about your future," came with a hand to her chest, sucking the oxygen from the room. She never asked what I wanted my future to be, only mourned the one they'd scripted, a barren landscape of their imagining. While I drifted, Jason soared. His business degree from a top-tier school landed him a high-flying finance job, a sleek condo with views that screamed, "I've made it." Family dinners, when I could stomach them, were showcases for his triumphs. One Christmas stands vivid in my mind, the scent of pine needles and roasting turkey, oppressive as Dad clapped Jason's shoulder, his voice booming over a ludicrously expensive watch he'd gifted him. That's my boy making his mark. My attempt to share a fledgling idea for a community tech project, something to help people navigate local resources, earned a polite nod and a "good to keep yourself busy, son." The implication was clear: hobbies, not a career. Jason's advice, cloaked in brotherly concern, was equally cutting: get serious, find your footing. His feet firmly on the fast track, couldn't imagine another path. Those years after med school were a blur of cheap apartments, the stale smell of instant noodles mixing with loneliness. Part-time jobs paid bills but chipped away at my soul, and the question haunted my sleepless nights. Were they right? Was I a failure? The weight of their disappointment was a cloak I couldn't shed, but beneath it a spark of defiance flickered. I'd started volunteering at a local disability resource center, witnessing the soul-crushing frustration of people tangled in bureaucratic red tape for basic health care. That spark grew into a purpose, a refusal to accept that things couldn't be better. I taught myself to code not for glory but for those people I'd met, their struggles etched into my mind. Access Path began as a side project, a simple database to connect them to accessible providers. Each line of code written in the dim glow of my monitor felt like a small rebellion against the narrative my family had written for me. The first email from a user: "Your program helped me find a doctor," was a lifeline, a warmth spreading through my chest that drowned out their voices, if only for a moment. But as I stood in my apartment, the invitation to Jason's engagement dinner, a stark reminder on my counter, I knew the battle to be seen was far from over. Their dismissal loomed, a familiar storm I'd have to face again. The hum of my old desktop computer was my only companion in those early days, a steady pulse in the quiet solitude of my tiny apartment. Access Path wasn't born from a bolt of inspiration, but from a slow, stubborn burn kindled at a disability resource center. I'd volunteered there driven by a vague need to do something meaningful after leaving med school. What I found were people, real people, not case studies caught in bureaucratic quicksand, fighting for basic healthcare information, for specialists who understood their needs for a shred of dignity. Their frustration became mine, a weight that settled in my chest alongside my family's disapproval. I started small, teaching myself to code properly, building a shareable database of local accessible healthcare providers. Late nights blurred together, fueled by black coffee and a refusal to believe this was all life could be. The glow of my monitor cast shadows across the peeling wallpaper, and each line of code felt like a quiet act of defiance, a way to prove to myself, if no one else, that I wasn't the failure they thought. The first email arrived unexpectedly. "Your little program helped me find a doctor who actually understands my condition. Thank you." That spark of gratitude ignited something in me, a warmth that momentarily eclipsed the years of familial scorn. Access Path grew quietly, steadily. 10,000 users, then 50,000. I met David Chun at a local tech meetup, the air thick with the smell of lukewarm pizza and the drone of a presenter. David was brilliant, a coder leagues ahead of me, but more importantly, he saw the potential in Access Path when my family couldn't. We became co-founders, our first office a cluttered closet above a print shop reeking of industrial ink and David's overly strong coffee. It was chaotic, cramped, but alive with creation, a sanctuary where I could breathe. We secured our first small grant, onboarded nonprofit clients, expanded state by state. Each milestone was a private victory, a silent rebuttal to the narrative of my inadequacy. I tried sharing these triumphs with my family, but their indifference was a cold fist in my gut. I remember telling Mom about a pilot program we'd launched in a neighboring state projected to help thousands. Her eyes glazed over her response, a distracted, "That's nice, dear," before she shifted to Jason's latest promotion, his plans for a boat. The deflation was instant, a reminder that my victories didn't fit their script. Access Path wasn't just a project, it was my anchor proof that my life had purpose, even if they couldn't see it. As the platform grew, 80,000 users, partnerships with state agencies, I felt a quiet pride I rarely allowed myself. But the engagement dinner loomed a summons to a stage where my role was already written, the underachiever, the detour. Standing in my apartment, the invitation's weight heavy in my hand, I glanced at my phone's screen, the stats a glowing reminder of what I'd built. Could I hold on to that truth in the face of their dismissal? The question lingered sharp as the scent of ink from that first office as I steeled myself for the night ahead. The dread coiled in my stomach like a living thing as I stood before my closet, the invitation's weight lingering in my mind like a bruise. Tonight was Jason's engagement dinner at La Toy, a restaurant so ostentatious it felt like a monument to my parents' tastes. I could already picture the scene: crystal clinking, murmured conversations, the subtle scrape of silver on china, every detail designed to scream wealth and status. My fingers brushed over the drab suit. Mom always hinted I should wear the one that made me feel like an undertaker at my own funeral. But a spark of rebellion flickered, small but fierce. I reached instead for the charcoal gray suit I'd bought with a bonus after Access Path closed a tough contract. It fit well, made me feel capable, like I could stand taller in a room that always tried to shrink me. I checked my phone one last time, 80,000 active users, a number that grounded me, a quiet reminder of what I'd built despite their dismissal. Shutting it off felt like locking away a piece of armor, but I needed to face this unarmed raw. The drive to La Toy was a blur, the city lights streaking past like accusations. I handed my keys to the valet, the air thick with expensive perfume and the promise of exquisite food wafting from the ornate entrance. My collar, comfortable moments ago, tightened around my throat as I stepped inside. The restaurant was a hushed symphony of opulence, the kind of place where your bank balance felt silently judged by the maitre d'. I spotted them immediately ensconced at a prime circular table, a tableau of familial bliss for public consumption. My father, Richard, held court, his voice a low rumble as he regaled Sarah's parents with some self-important anecdote. Mom fluttered around Sarah, adjusting an imaginary stray hair, her nervous energy palpable. Jason, impeccable in a suit that likely cost more than my first car, wore his signature smirk, a predator's confidence. "Michael, glad you could make it," Dad said, his handshake perfunctory, his eyes already scanning for someone more notable. The unspoken "don't embarrass us" hung between us. Mom's hug was too tight, too brief, carrying the faint scent of her lily-of-the-valley perfume, now tied to anxiety in my mind. "Oh, Michael, you look neat," she chirped, her eyes flicking over my suit with a mix of surprise and something I couldn't read, relief maybe that I wasn't in a stained shirt. Sarah Miller turned to me, her smile genuine, her handshake firm. "So nice to finally meet you, Michael," she said, her hazel eyes warm, a stark contrast to the strained formality of my family. I managed an awkward smile. "You too, Sarah. Congratulations." For a moment, her grounded presence felt like a lifeline in this gilded cage. But as I sat, the familiar script unfolded: Dad's boasts about Jason's latest financial conquest, Mom's anxious glances, Jason's smug nods. I focused on the bread plate's intricate pattern, bracing for the inevitable digs, the air thick with their expectations. Could I hold on to that spark of defiance, or would their narrative swallow me whole again? The clink of crystal and the low hum of conversation wrapped around me like a tightening net as I sat at the table, the opulent glow of La Toy doing little to warm the chill in my chest. My father's voice dominated, recounting Jason's latest triumph, a promotion to vice president so young, so promising, while Sarah's parents nodded politely, their smiles practiced. Mom fluttered beside Sarah, her hands never still, her eyes darting to me with that familiar mix of pity and expectation. Jason leaned back, his suit pristine, his smirk a polished blade slicing through any hope I had of being seen. I kept my gaze on the bread plate, its delicate pattern a safer focus than their faces, the taste of the artfully arranged food turning to dust in my mouth. Dad's laugh boomed as he answered Sarah's father, Arthur, about Jason's portfolio management, each word another stone in the wall, separating me from their glittering world. "Tens of millions." Mom chimed in, her voice bright with pride, so complex and important. "Isn't it, dear?" She beamed at Jason, then shot me a look that screamed, "This is success, Michael." I felt the heat rise in my neck, the old barbed wire knot twisting tighter. Arthur, jovial and kind, turned to me during a lull. "What do you do?" "Michael?" Before I could answer, Dad interjected, his hearty laugh not reaching his eyes. "Michael's our free spirit still chasing butterflies, eh, son?" He winked at Arthur, the kind of wink that made me the punchline. "I run a tech company," I murmured the words, feeling flimsy against their grand pronouncements. Mom, ever the navigator away from me, launched into a story about Jason's childhood, her voice overly loud, drowning my response. But Sarah unexpectedly leaned in, her hazel eyes curious. "A tech company. What kind of platform?" Her question was a lifeline, fragile but real. "It helps people with disabilities access healthcare services," I said, keeping my voice low, braced for dismissal. "Streamlines finding specialists, consolidates resources." Before she could reply, Dad waved a hand. "Very niche, a passion project. Keeps him occupied." Sarah frowned just for a second at Dad's interruption, her gaze lingering on me with a thoughtful intensity that felt foreign in this room. I braced for Mom's next diversion, but Sarah pressed on undeterred. "That sounds impactful. How did you get into it?" Her genuine interest was a crack in the suffocating script, and I felt a flicker of hope. I started to explain the volunteering, the frustration with bureaucracy, but Mom cut in again, her voice sharp with forced cheer. "Oh, but Jason's new role, Arthur, it's just incredible." The table's attention shifted back to Jason, who offered a smug nod, his eyes flicking to me with that familiar condescension. "Big responsibilities," he said, leaning back. "Not everyone's cut out for that pressure." The word pressure almost made me scoff. I thought of the all-nighters with David, our server, crashing during a critical update, the weight of users' livelihoods on my shoulders. But I said nothing, the silence from my end of the table, a chasm. Sarah's curiosity, though, lingered in my mind like a faint glow, a hint that someone might see me, even if my family refused. The air grew heavier, their judgments a palpable weight, and I wondered if I could hold on to that flicker through the night. The toasts began, each one a polished performance that deepened the chasm at the table. Sarah's father, Arthur, gave a warm speech, welcoming Jason, his words genuine and heartfelt. Then Dad stood, glass raised, his voice resonating with paternal pride as he extolled Jason's virtues, a son who exceeded every expectation, a beacon of hard work. His gaze swept the table, landing on me with performative pity. "Life isn't straight for everyone," he said, his tone somber. "Some take detours, march to a different drum, however faint. We support Michael in finding his way." The words were a public branding me as the lost son, the faint beat. I stared at the tablecloth, its pristine weave like sandpaper under my fingers, Mom's sniffle a timed echo. The clinking glasses felt nervous, the silence heavy as I braced for more. Then Sarah turned to me, her brow furrowed in thought. Her voice cut through the lull, soft but clear. "Access Path, you said it helps people with disabilities navigate healthcare?" I nodded, surprised she'd remembered amid the Jason-centric flood. "Yes. Streamlines access to specialists, connects support networks." Her eyes widened, igniting with recognition. "And your name's Michael Carter." "Wait, are you the Michael Carter? The CEO of Access Path?" The room froze. A fork clattered nearby, unnaturally loud in the hush. Dad's wineglass halted mid-sip, his eyes unblinking. Mom's smile vanished, her hand clutching her pearls. Jason stared, his smugness wiped away, replaced by shock. Sarah's parents glanced over, intrigued by the shift. Before I could respond, Sarah's face lit up, oblivious at first to the bomb she'd dropped. "Oh my God, it is you! Access Path is incredible. My brother Mark was paralyzed in a car accident 3 years ago. Your platform's been a lifeline." She turned to the table, her passion ringing out. Finding specialists who understood his needs, coordinating care insurance nightmares, it was exhausting. Access Path simplified it all. Mark found an adaptive sports program through your links. It gave him community back. She gushed about features, the curated database Dad called niche peer forums for solace, telehealth options, saving trips. She'd read about the low-profile CEO, never dreaming it was her future brother-in-law. "Our hospital foundation's been trying to partner with you for months. The impact is phenomenal." A wave of heat washed over me, then a disorienting lightness, the floor tilting. Dad's face drained of color, pasty gray. Mom's lips moved silently, eyes darting between us. Jason gaped, resentment flickering. The silence was deafening, their judgments suspended. Then Sarah mused, "It's funny Mark heard wealthy folks at a charity gala dismissing the founder. Someone named Henderson praising their finance whiz son, laughing about the other working on some little website for the disabled, admirable, but not a real career like his brothers." The family name was Carter. She stammered, realizing hand to mouth. "Oh goodness, I'm so sorry." Henderson Dad's golf buddy, the overheard call months ago, snippets of dismissal now crystal clear. This wasn't ignorance. It was active curation of my failure broadcast to peers to shield their shame. The little website stung like venom. Dad flushed crimson, then paled. Mom let out a wounded cry. "We never understood the scale, Michael," she whispered. "We thought it was small." The air suffocated eyes on me as adrenaline surged, a calm settling beneath. For once, the script was shattered. The silence at the table was a living thing, thick and suffocating, as if the air itself had absorbed the weight of Sarah's revelation. My father's face, usually ruddy with confidence, was a shifting landscape of shock and embarrassment, his wineglass trembling slightly in his hand. Mom shrank into herself, her eyes wide and tear-filled, her fingers twisting the napkin in her lap. Jason stared at his plate, jaw tight. The golden boy smirk gone, replaced by a sullen resentment that seemed to curdle the air around him. Sarah's parents, caught in the crossfire of this family implosion, exchanged bewildered glances, their polite smiles faltering. I felt every eye on me, a surge of adrenaline roaring in my ears, but beneath it, a profound calm took root. Years of suppressed resentment, of feeling invisible, began to recede like a tide, leaving behind a clarity I hadn't expected. Sarah's words had shattered the Carter family narrative, and in that wreckage I saw the truth. They hadn't just misunderstood me, they'd chosen not to see. I spoke, my voice quiet but steady, devoid of triumph or anger, just fact. Access Path has over 80,000 active users across 15 states. We partner with 3 state healthcare agencies with a backlog of national nonprofits wanting to integrate our services. Last quarter, we closed a Series A funding round with a top healthcare venture capital firm. The words hung in the air, simple and undeniable, a counterpoint to years of their dismissal. Dad's mouth worked silently, a man unmoored from his script. Mom's lips trembled, her usual sighs absent, replaced by a fractured whisper. "We didn't realize, Michael." Jason's fork scraped his plate, a sharp, involuntary sound. The power dynamic had shifted, not with a shout, but with the quiet weight of truth. The rest of the dinner was a blur of strained politeness. Sarah's parents, sensing the tension, steered conversation to neutral ground, asking me about Access Path with a newfound respect. I answered calmly, detailing our mission, our tech, our growth. Careful to keep gloating from my tone, the truth was enough. Dad stayed silent, fumbling his glass, clearing his throat, but offering no pronouncements. Mom's attempts at explanation dissolved into tearful fragments. "We just wanted the best for you." Jason picked at his food, avoiding my gaze, his resentment palpable. I excused myself early, the rich food tasteless, the goodbyes stiff. Stepping into the cool night air felt like breaking the surface after drowning. Days later, my phone buzzed with uncharacteristic urgency. Mom's voicemails were thick with tears, her tone cloying. "Michael, darling, we're so proud. We didn't show it properly, did we?" Dad left a gruff message, hesitant, almost humble. "We'd like to understand your company. Michael, call me." I let them go to voicemail, their validation feeling hollow after years of dismissal. Sarah called, mortified, apologizing for any strife. "You told the truth," I reassured her, grateful for her unintended catalyst. But Jason's silence gnawed at me. I met him at a downtown cafe, the air neutral, impersonal. He was defensive, his smirk a weak shadow. "You're a big shot now, huh?" "No need to rub it in." I kept my voice even. "Did you know about Access Path's growth?" His facade, cracked eyes on his latte. "I saw the TechCrunch article you sent. I Googled it. I knew it was big." His confession tumbled out. He hadn't told our parents, wanting to keep his role as the success. The admission was a fresh wound, his envy a betrayal deeper than I'd imagined. I felt sadness, not anger, for a brother who needed to dim my light to shine. I told him I needed space, the words calm but final, a boundary drawn in the ashes of our old dynamic. The conversation with Jason lingered like a bruise, tender and raw, but it also freed something in me, a final untying of the knots that had bound me to their narrative. I needed one last talk with my parents, not for their approval, but for my own closure. We met at their house, the familiar scent of leather books and polished wood in Dad's study, no longer intimidating, just a backdrop to a truth I'd finally claimed. I didn't shout or accuse. I spoke calmly, my voice steady, despite the tremor deep inside. Your definition of success was so narrow, I told them, and because I didn't fit, I was made to feel inadequate, a constant disappointment. I needed you to see me then, to value my efforts, not just the outcome. Mom's tears came, her sighs hollow now, stripped of their theatrical weight. "We didn't understand, Michael," she whispered, her hands twisting a tissue. Dad's silence was heavy, his usual bluster gone, replaced by an uncomfortable flicker of something, regret perhaps, or respect. I didn't need their promises of change. I needed space, my terms. Walking away, I felt a weight lift, a release I hadn't known I'd been carrying. I threw myself into Access Path with renewed vigor. The hum of our now larger office, a comforting pulse. David and our team. My chosen family became my anchor, their belief in our mission a steady validation. My interactions with my parents grew sparse, polite, managed by my comfort level. The old toxic dynamic was broken, shattered that night at Latoy. Months later, I attended Jason and Sarah's wedding, the air thick with flowers and celebration. I was civil with Jason, our nod distant, but not hostile. Mom and Dad watched me from across the reception hall, their eyes holding regret, confusion, and a faint, dawning respect. Sarah greeted me with a warm smile, her sincerity a quiet gift. We talked about Access Path, her brother Mark's progress, a bond of mutual respect forming where I'd least expected it. I felt peace, no longer the outcast, just Michael defined by my own path. The final scene wasn't a tense dinner or a strained meeting, but a stage at a healthcare technology conference, the spotlight warm on my face. I spoke about Access Path's mission, the power of technology to bridge gaps, to empower. The auditorium stretched before me, filled with doctors, patients, advocates, faces lit with shared purpose. Each word felt like a declaration, not of victory over my family, but of my own truth. The applause was a soft roar, but the real validation was internal, a quiet joy resonating in my bones. I'd spent years letting my family cast me as the son who faltered, but Sarah's voice, an unexpected catalyst, helped me reclaim my story. The journey wasn't about forcing their acknowledgement, it was about seeing myself, recognizing my worth beyond their applause or criticism. As the conference lights dimmed, I stepped off the stage, my steps lighter, the air softer, carrying the faint hum of possibility. The faces in the crowd blurred into a tapestry of shared hope, their stories woven into Access Path's mission, a mission that had become my heartbeat. I thought of my family, their voices now distant echoes, no longer the measure of my worth. Mom's calls had slowed her tears less frequent. Dad's gruff messages carried a hesitant curiosity I didn't need to answer. Jason's wedding had been a quiet milestone, a moment of civility, not reconciliation. Sarah's warmth lingered, a reminder that understanding could come from unexpected places. I stood alone in the emptying auditorium, the spotlight's warmth fading, replaced by a calm that settled deep. My path wasn't theirs, and that was enough. I'd built something meaningful, touched lives, found purpose in the quiet moments of impact. The world felt vast, not suffocating, and as I walked into the night, the stars above whispered a truth I'd always known, but only now believed my story was mine to write, and it was enough.